In the depths of a snowstorm, an almost forgotten Cold War relic surfaces. It wasn't a missile, a spy, or a classified blueprint that held such profound importance. It was a brick, a small, dense metallic block, so unremarkable that one might casually dismiss it if found in a workshop. Yet, in the most severe Arctic blizzards, this unassuming brick frequently determines survival. Picture this, stranded in the high north, under a sky so dark it feels like a low ceiling. The wind howls across the ice, and temperatures plummet to lethal levels, freezing exposed skin in minutes. Your aircraft has just crash-landed, the radio failing, and fuel nearly depleted. Amidst this desolation, there's no warmth, no power, no sanctuary. Inside the frigid fuselage, every metal surface sears with cold. Most tools are useless, batteries dead, and fuel congealed. Matches shatter like glass. But deep within the survival kit, one item remains intact, silent, solid, and sealed. A metal block devoid of wires, buttons, or moving parts. Cold War soldiers simply called it the heating brick. Initially, it feels like a burdensome weight. Then, incredibly, a gentle warmth begins to emanate, spreading through your gloves, into your hands, and to your core. A surge of life-affirming heat. No flame, no fuel, no oxygen required, yet it provides enough warmth to sustain a stranded soldier through a merciless night. This isn't folklore. It was a recurrent reality across the frigid front lines of the Cold War. A conflict waged not just with ideologies and machinery, but against the brutal, silent adversary, cold. Tonight on History Prime, we unveil the ingenious heating brick that Cold War soldiers relied upon, a device almost entirely unknown to the general public. First, when the Cold War confronted extreme cold, it wasn't merely a clash of political doctrines, weaponry, and military strategies. It was also a confrontation with an age-old, unforgiving force, the cold itself. As NATO and the Warsaw Pact extended their operations into the Arctic, Siberia, and Canada's far northern reaches, they entered a battlefield dominated by a silent, impartial enemy. This foe neither fired bullets nor negotiated. It simply froze. In these regions, commonplace items became deadly hazards. Matches broke before igniting, batteries drained completely in hours, and liquid fuel thickened or solidified within its containers. Engines seized, metal fractured, and human skin simultaneously numbed and burned. From isolated outposts to polar research teams and pilots patrolling the frozen edges of the world, a universal truth emerged. Without warmth, all strategic plans were futile. One could possess the most advanced weapons, sophisticated machines, and sharpest intelligence, but if the body couldn't withstand the cold, everything was reduced to scrap metal strewn across frozen terrain. Thus, far from the sounds of combat, another competition quietly began, not in missile silos, but in laboratories, spearheaded not by generals, but by engineers. They sought a different kind of weapon, one not for destruction, but for preservation, a source of heat that was simple, dependable, and immune to the failures of fire, fuel, and delicate technology. The culmination of this quest, after countless experiments and discarded prototypes, was condensed into a single, unassuming metal block, a brick, as the soldiers called it, small, silent, and curiously heavy. Within it resided a profound philosophy of survival, a reminder that in the Cold War's harshest environments, victory didn't always belong to the nation with the largest warhead. Sometimes it belonged to the side that could simply stay warm long enough to endure. Second, the secret within the heat-generating brick. If one were to dissect a Cold War heating brick, they wouldn't find wires, explosives, or hidden electronics. Instead, it would reveal only a thick liquid, or, occasionally, a cloudy crystalline block sealed within metal. Ordinary, quiet, almost disappointing, until its capabilities are understood. This unassuming material can store immense heat and then release it on demand, functioning like a thermal battery decades ahead of its time. The secret lies in a phase change material, a substance that absorbs energy when melting and releases it upon freezing. The military's preferred compound was sodium acetate trihydrate, the same chemistry found in modern reusable hand warmers. When heated past 58 degrees Celsius, it melts, silently absorbing a vast amount of thermal energy. The remarkable part is that even as it cools, it remains liquid, like a dormant agent awaiting a signal. This signal could be the flexing of a small metal disc, a sharp tap, or even the introduction of a crystal seed. When triggered, the liquid rapidly crystallizes, releasing all its stored heat. There's no smoke, no flame, just a smooth, consistent warmth that lasts for hours, sufficient to revive numb hands, protect an exposed chest, or make a sealed cockpit habitable again. The engineering is elegant. Unlike water, it doesn't expand upon solidification, preventing the container from rupturing. It can be reheated and reused indefinitely, and, requiring no oxygen, operates anywhere. Inside submarines, bunkers, aircraft cabins, or wind-swept tents where a flame would be hazardous or impossible. It is not merely a gadget, it is a quiet masterpiece of survival science, simple, reliable, and profoundly effective in the crucial moment when cold threatens life. Third, missions that could not fail and the unremarked brick. In the less publicized archives of the Cold War, evidence of this device appears repeatedly. Arctic patrol pilots carried several heating bricks in their survival kits, understanding that a single forced landing on ice could transform a routine mission into a desperate struggle for survival. Small military teams guarding remote outposts utilized them to prevent engines from freezing solid overnight. For an immobilized vehicle in the Arctic was a death sentence, not merely an inconvenience. There were missions where failure did not just mean the loss of a soldier, but the loss of vital intelligence, momentum, or a fragile strategic advantage. During reconnaissance operations, rolls of black and white film and delicate measuring instruments were as vulnerable as human skin. A sudden drop in temperature, a moment of freezing, could irrecoverably ruin months of data. Concealed among compasses, rations, and tools, the silent brick assumed a responsibility no other device could bear, protecting the assets that absolutely could not fail. Across the ice, Soviet research stations on the drifting Arctic pack faced winters where resupply was impossible for months. Machines needed to function, laboratories to operate, and personnel to sleep, eat, measure, record, and survive, all while the relentless cold waited like a patient assassin. In these stations, the heating brick was not a mere secret weapon. It was a lifeline, a quiet cornerstone that prevented the collapse of every other system. Perhaps the greatest irony is this: In films and historical accounts, we recall the dramatic symbols of the Cold War. Spies in shadows, bombers crossing borders, nuclear submarines beneath the ice. Yet almost no one remembers the unremarkable metal blocks that saved thousands from frostbite, protected brittle film from breaking, and kept soldiers alive long enough to complete missions that never made headlines. It wasn't heroic or dramatic, but it worked. And in the Arctic, that was everything. Fourth, when a military secret permeated daily life. One of the most unforeseen chapters of this narrative unfolded as the Cold War gradually de-escalated, though winter's grip remained firm. Across Eastern Europe in the 1970s, heating fuel was never guaranteed. Fireplaces burned sporadically. Coal was scarce, and electricity flickered with a tired pulse. Yet the cold offered no concessions. It arrived as relentlessly as ever. Consequently, the military's quiet innovation seeped into civilian existence. Heating bricks, once reserved for pilots and Arctic patrols, began appearing in ordinary homes. Families would boil the metal blocks in large pots, allowing the internal phase change material to absorb as much heat as possible. They then wrapped the bricks in thick cloth, placed them under bed covers, tucked them into coats, or carried them on long train journeys through the frozen countryside. A single brick provided warmth for hours, and several, used in rotation, could extend comfort through the longest winter nights. Compared to traditional hot water bottles, these civilian bricks were safer and more resilient. They didn't burst, leak scalding water, or crack with age or abrupt temperature changes. In dimly lit, cramped rooms, a lone, silent brick under a blanket offered more than mere physical warmth. It alleviated the subtle anxiety of enduring a winter of shortages. From an external perspective, it appeared to be a minor technical convenience. However, for families struggling through months of cold, this small metal block frequently marked the distinction between a night merely endured and a night genuinely rested. It ceased to be a military secret. It was simply human survival, quietly shared, passed from hand to hand. Fifth, from Cold War battlefields to the warmth you hold today. If you've ever purchased a reusable hand warmer, the kind that activates the moment you flex a small metal disc, you've held the direct descendant of a technology once linked to drifting ice stations, Arctic air patrols, and missions so clandestine they were never recorded in any history book. Initially conceived for military personnel enduring Earth's most severe cold, this innovation has seamlessly transitioned into daily existence, retaining its original mechanics. You immerse the pack in boiling water, allowing its crystals to liquefy and absorb thermal energy. As it cools, it maintains a liquid state, acting as a dormant thermal cell poised for activation. Upon command, a quick manipulation of the metal disc triggers rapid crystallization throughout the pack, emitting a consistent warmth for hours. Once cooled, a simple reheating resets the cycle, repeatable scores, even hundreds of times. Nowadays, these warmers are placed in sleeping bags during camping excursions, tucked inside footwear, applied to the abdomen on long winter evenings, or kept in jacket pockets during frigid commutes. A few of these contemporary blocks within a winter survival kit are more than mere conveniences. They embody a silent safeguard against unexpected cold, moments one hopes never to encounter. It's truly remarkable, this realization. Many of us utilize a technology rooted in some of humanity's most arduous and icy historical periods, often without comprehending that this very principle once sustained pilots, secured invaluable reconnaissance data, and fended off demise on nights so cold that even metal froze. What once silently preserved lives now merely warms hands in everyday settings, largely unnoticed. Sixth, conclusion. A single block, a philosophy of survival. The narrative of the Cold War heating block imparts a subtle truth. History is frequently recounted through the accomplishments of leaders, diplomatic agreements, and missile deadlocks. Yet, the realities for those on the front lines were sculpted by items modest enough to fit in a pocket. While global attention was riveted on nuclear standoffs and espionage, survival often hinged on an object incapable of explosion, unable to fire, and devoid of any emblem of authority. A simple block, unassuming, inconspicuous to grand strategic designs, sustained soldiers long enough to fulfill their duties, carried pilots through nights that would have otherwise solidified them, and enabled scientists on drifting ice stations to persistently accumulate crucial data. Its appearance was far from heroic, but its purpose undeniably was. Perhaps the most profound legacy of this heating block isn't the technology itself, but the perspective it offers. It reminds us that survival doesn't invariably stem from the most conspicuous or intricate invention. Sometimes it emerges from the most elementary scientific concepts, those that are modest, dependable, and profoundly human. It underscores that behind every tense border and every Cold War headline were individuals striving for the most fundamental necessities: a comforting meal, a few hours of rest, a night free from the pervasive chill. It also suggests that in our volatile modern era, tools requiring no electricity, no fuel, and no infrastructure, tools as straightforward as a thermal block, might warrant greater consideration than we currently afford them. For when we recall the Cold War, our minds typically gravitate towards the clamour, the missiles, the threats, the shadows. Yet, if one listens intently, beyond the howling winds over Arctic ice and the straining engines grappling with the cold, there's another sound entirely. A faint, steady warmth emanating from an unassuming metal block. A small, quiet item, yet it bestowed upon human beings something they could never afford to forfeit: the capacity to endure, the freedom to contemplate, and the opportunity to continue crafting the subsequent chapter of their own existence. And at times, that stands as the ultimate triumph.